Welcome, everybody, to the November meeting of the Alternative Voting Methods Statewide Task Force. Thank you, Beth, for helping us set this up. Some people are still coming in, but we're going to go ahead and start the business stuff, and so we can have time to get through the great stuff.
Celeste, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Wendy's note taker through Otter AI is asking to be admitted. Are you okay with that?
I guess I'm okay with it. I don't know. How does
Okay.
LWV feel about it?
I, I'm fine with it. I have used Otter
Okay.
AI.
Okay. Good.
Great.
So we've got three elections to talk about and also some enabling legislation on the agenda. When you signed in, you agreed to these meeting norms, so I'm not going to go through them, but I did want to remind people. This is what we did at our last meeting. We followed up on Making Democracy Work Day. We talked about some enabling legislation and moved forward a little bit with that. I'll talk a little bit more about that today. It says there are three people in the waiting room.
I'm not getting the dinglings, Beth.
Okay, I'm moving forward and letting you all figure it out. Thank you for letting me do this stuff, and you worry about the tech stuff.
You can
So
turn off the waiting room by just clicking on the tools on the toolbar, and then you don't have to worry about letting people in. They'll just come in automatically, unless you don't want to do that.
Thank you.
so
I'm getting them now.
we're on the screen with the various league folks, and Beth Hendricks is on this call. And I don't know if Tony Larson is coming or not. It would be great if she does. I'm Celeste Landry. I'm the facilitator for this group. And I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other and do introductions. And hi, Andrea. Andrea, do you want to call on people to do introductions?
Sure, I can do that.
That would be great.
Since I'm already talking, I'll kick it off quickly. I'm Andrea Wilkins. I'm the legislative liaison with the State League, and I'll pass it over to Beth.
Oh, hi. I'm Beth Hendricks with the Colorado State League. Hey, Clayton. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Shall I give it to someone, or do you want to direct, Celeste?
I want somebody else to direct. I talk too much during this meeting. So Andrea could do it.
Yeah, I'll keep calling on people
Great,
if that
that'd be
works.
great.
Great.
All right. It looks like next up on my screen is Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Freed. I'm actually a member of the Larimer County League of Women Voters, but I'm here to talk about ranked choice voting in Fort Collins. I'm on the board of ranked choice voting for Colorado and have been working on this issue for a couple of decades.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eric. Pat, you're up next.
Did you say Pat?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pat Venturo. I have been on the voting methods team for the Boulder League for a number of years and just still keep trucking along.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Next up, I am guessing this is not your name, but Lycan?
That's I need to change that. So my first name is Deborah. My last name is Lycan. It is a name, but it's my last name. And I'm from Durango, and I've been attending meetings off and on, and I'm still learning. I do have some people in the Durango League interested in getting more educated on alternative voting methods and maybe doing some education. So we're making some progress.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Lori, please go ahead.
Did you say Lori or Chris?
No, you said Lori. I'm sorry. I had to unmute. So I'm Lori Stevens. I am a member of the Boulder League of Women Voters League, and I am relatively new to this group, and I have an interest in voting methods, and I'm learning.
Thank you, Lori. And now let's go over to you, Chris.
I'm Chris Baum. I'm an approval voting advocate.
Great. Clayton. Nice to see you again, Clayton.
Good to see you as well, and good to see a lot of folks, friendly faces on this call. I'm Clayton King. I'm the founding director for the Alliance for Competitive Elections.
And one of the guest speakers today. Thank you for coming.
Yes, absolutely. Jen, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Jen Cleland. I'm in the Boulder League, and along with Celeste, I'm co-leader of the voting methods team for the Boulder League. I'm also a mathematician in my day job, and I study redistricting and elections.
Thanks, Jen. Let's see, Stacy, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Stacy Frank, and I work for Clayton on competitive elections.
Thanks, Stacy. Betsy, go ahead.
Betsy McBride, League of Women Voters of Idaho, but by cheating, I'm also a member of the Arapahoe Douglas County League. Yeah.
And, and former president of the Colorado League of Women Voters.
Yeah.
Thank you, Betsy. Neil, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Neil McBurnett. I'm in the Boulder League for about a quarter decade, and I've been interested in voting methods since the 1990s, first with ranked methods, and now proportional representation and approval. I'm also very active in election integrity and election auditing since 2002. I'm the league's representative to the Bipartisan Election Advisory Commission of the Colorado Secretary of State.
You said you've been a member for a quarter decade. Did you mean a quarter century?
Let's go for a quarter century. Yeah.
Thanks, Neil. Wendy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Wendy. I am with the Colorado Forward Party, and I'm out in the Grand Valley and hoping to bring election reform to Grand Junction and Mays County.
Thanks, Wendy. Kate, go ahead.
Hi, Kate Van Houten, Jeffco League member, and I'm here to learn. I'm intensely curious about alternative voting methods, but I'm also really concerned about campaign finance reform. That's one of my biggies. Thanks.
Does the election task force talk more about campaign finance? I know we don't do it very much.
We haven't talked about it recently, but it's an excellent topic. And there used to be an active group, but maybe not at the state level. Good idea. Come join us this Thursday at noon.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Joseph.
Hi, sorry about the noise in the background here, just hanging out with my kids. I'm actually a new member of the Chafee League and interested in alternatives to voting like citizens assemblies, but here to listen in on some of the voting things as well. Just as voting does not always get us that close to equal representation, and some of the more random selection methods might do that. So if there's anybody interested in sort of citizens assembly and using jury roles to randomly address decisions in the community, please let me know.
Neil was on a community assembly in Boulder, but it wasn't as authentic as it could be. There's one that's more authentic going on right now in the city of Boulder. Denver is talking about doing a civic assembly, which I think is the same thing as a community assembly. Chantel Lewis, I think, is the council member who's proposed that for next year. So I want to see more community assemblies too, or civic assemblies, or whatever we want to call them. Okay, thanks everybody for introducing yourselves. I heard that Tina Harris who is the Larimer County Clerk, is planning to show up. And when she shows up, we are going to talk about the Fort Collins election. So we will just stop whatever we're doing and talk about Fort Collins when she gets here. And Eric is also here to talk about Fort Collins, as is Clayton, and I guess Stacy, because Stacy's also with the Alliance for Competitive Elections. So welcome, everybody. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, if I move on to the next screen, do you see the next screen? Great. Okay. So just some updates on things that have been happening. Denver approved changing its 2-winner at-large council contest to 2 single-winner at-large contests. The Denver League opposed the measure, but it passed. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I wanted to let people know about that. We delivered the letter to the Secretary of State that we have been talking about the last couple meetings, where we are asking for them to write the rules so that county clerks can conduct a proportional ranked voting election and approval voting elections. And it finally got delivered. I think it was the 3rd try, but we haven't received a response, and they don't have a very good track record of responding to us. So. And right now they're very busy with risk limiting audits. And if you want to ask anybody want to find out more about risk limiting audits, Neil McBurnett can answer all your questions, I think. There's a web page that the League of Women Voters of Boulder County has made up on proportional representation, and there's the QR code for it, or you can go to the Voting Methods team page, and there's a link to it from there. So Longmont had an election, and they're in the midst of trying to get election results. They're in the midst of trying to implement or adopt instant runoff voting for their 3 ward and mayor contests, and proportional ranked voting for the at-large council members. And there are 3 of them, and all 3 would be elected in one ballot contest. So they'd have to change the timing of the elections. But the good news is that all 4 of the candidates who won this year are on record as being in favor of referring a ballot question to the voters, asking to make this change. And for those of you who don't have enough to do for today, at 7 p.m., there's going to be a campaign kickoff for RCV for Longmont, and you can go to this website and RSVP and join me at the meeting afterwards. The El Paso County Clerk held a vacancy election, that's in quotes for a reason, to fill the District 5 County Commissioner seat until the 2026 election. Usually vacancy elections are held in even years for partisan offices, and they're open to any candidate, and all voters can participate. But this was a new, never before conducted kind of government run election that was established in House Bill 2513-19, and it limited the candidates to only Republicans, because it was a Republican who vacated the seat, and limited the electorate only to Republicans and unaffiliated voters. So they got thousands and thousands of people to vote, but they disenfranchised Democrats and voters registered with minor parties. So it's likely that this is unconstitutional, but it must be challenged in the court system to get that unconstitutionality ruling, and lawsuits are expensive. Betty, I see you have your hand up. Betsy.
So, yeah. So was this the earlier concern that this would be a way to get somebody in office so that the person who ran didn't really intend to stay, but they wanted to make it possible for somebody else to come in, or is that not the issue here?
Those allegations have certainly been made. The last item on the agenda today is talking about a vacancy election in Utah, and we'll talk about some of the problems. Yeah. So starting in 2027, there can be, this was a county commissioner vacancy election, and starting in 2027, they may have state Senate and state House rep vacancy, quote, elections, which I think are a violation of Section 2 of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So we'll see if we can get a court challenge to that one or not. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and move on then. We have some allies that we work with, the Colorado Fiscal Institute and Courageous Colorado. And the Fiscal Institute is having what they call Vision 2076 events to find out from Coloradans what they think Colorado should look like and how to get there in 2076. There are two more coming up, one in Montrose, one in Durango. That's for you, Deborah. Durango, November 20th, Thursday. And Wendy, where are you from? Are you near Montrose?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to see about sharing this with our Montrose community organizer. I'm in Grand Junction.
Grand Junction. Okay, excellent. Good. I don't know if Courageous Colorado just wound up their activation tour, and I don't know if anybody knows what's happening next. Maybe you do, Andrea?
Yes, I know there are plans for a spring segment of the tour that's going to be focused on the Metro Denver area. So there's going to be a lot of dates there, none of which have been set yet, but that'll basically be the next segment in trying to gain statewide input.
Yeah, if any of you noticed the list, it was not the Front Range metro area so much. So, okay, let's, I wanted to tell you about a film that's going to be showing December 3rd from 6 to 7:30. It's hosted by Fixed Democracy First. So you could go to their website and then events, and then they have a democracy happy hour. And I find they start with a rundown of the week's news, and it's a pretty fabulous rundown. I'm so impressed by the person who runs this. So we have a national convention next year in Columbus, Ohio. So, but that's not till June, but why not put it on the calendar? Our next meeting date is December 15th from 5:30 to 7. Hope to see you there. Here is our national position, and you can see we've bolded the part about proportional representation. It doesn't get as much visibility and as much support as we would like it to get, but it's the best way to elect policymaking bodies. So I think, and the league thinks, so just passing that on. And speaking of proportional representation, Andrea and I in particular were members of the Legislative Action Committee, and we are working on getting some enabling legislation through passed so that county clerks will run a proportional ranked voting election. So let's talk about ranked voting. Here's a ranked voting ballot. You pick your first choice, you pick a different second choice. You don't have to pick any choices other than first choice, but the more choices you pick, the more chance your ballot has of surviving if your candidate, your favorite candidates drop out. There are many different kinds of RCV, and so there's an article that we, the league, has written that's in the Fulcrum that has little videos showing the different kinds of RCV, and some ranked voting methods do not fall in the RCV umbrella. So you can read more at that. And I think I sent that out in the invitation to this meeting too. So, okay, so that's what a ranked voting ballot looks like, and one filled in. And then when you start to count it, you only look at the first choice on the ballot for the first round. You use the same ballot for single winner and multi-winner contest, but the tabulation is different after step one, depending on if you're single or multi-winner, if you're proportional, if you're using the terrible kind they use in Utah. Sorry, it's not very democratic. And Utah so far is the only place it uses it. Maine briefly used it in one election and they quickly switched to the proportional kind. Okay. And then let's talk about proportional ranked voting. This is from, this quote is from a Daily Camera article talking about the Longmont effort. The proportional form used for multi-winner contests works by electing candidates who reach a set vote threshold, then redistributing extra votes and the ballots of the lowest finishing candidates to voters' next choices until all seats are filled. So I took that sentence, which I think is great. It's very succinct. And then I put it into numbered steps. Number one, elect candidates who reach a threshold. So if you need 1,000 votes to get a seat and you get 2,000 votes, you've certainly reached that threshold. So then you go to step two, it says redistribute extra votes above the threshold. So if you got 2,000 votes and you only need 1,000, they take every single ballot and they take half a vote and they keep it with the first choice on that ballot, and half a vote and it goes to the second choice on the ballot, so that your voice gets to get spread out among more than just your first candidate if your candidate is elected with extra votes. And then after they've elected all the people who have met the threshold, then they start eliminating the lowest finishing candidates, and whoever is next on the list who's not elected and not eliminated gets that vote on that eliminated candidate's ballot. And you repeat this process until all the seats are filled. It's a little more complicated, but it's so much more powerful. And when you have a proportional election, your elected body better represents the will of the electorate. So here you can see there are 3 big groups and 1 small group that vie for seats. And in a winner-take-all election, just the biggest group would win all the seats. That's why it's called winner-take-all. In proportional, you get better representation, more reflective of the electorate. Okay, so we are working on some enabling legislation, and the LAC officially approved advocating for enabling legislation. So now we have the stamp of approval from the State League of Women Voters. And we want enabling legislation for proportional ranked voting for municipalities and special districts. Right now, that proportional ranked voting is authorized for municipalities and special districts. But there are no rules for it. So we need to get those rules written, basically. We thought about adding county commissioners, and there was a bill this year about using proportional ranked voting to elect county commissioners, but the bill died, and we thought it might be cleaner just to go with what's already authorized and say, it's time to write the rules. It's been on the books since 2008. Let's write the rules for it. For like Fort Collins, the county clerk ran the Fort Collins election, but if the state legislature had not passed enabling legislation, the county clerk would probably have said, you're on your own, Fort Collins, do it on your own. But in 2021, House Bill 1071 passed. So Fort Collins didn't have to run the election. And instead, the county clerk, who's an expert at this, coordinated Fort Collins's election. And we want the same thing to be able to happen for cities that want to conduct a proportional ranked voting election. So the election could be part of a huge elections omnibus bill, or it could be a standalone bill. We think a huge bill would be a fine way to do it, because it would it's the first time we passed it for instant runoff voting, single winner version. That was a big lift, but now I think it should be easy to put it in an elections omnibus bill. We'll see. Sometimes they're controversial. And then the final thing is that the Colorado Voting Rights Act supports proportional voting methods, and that passed this year. It was Senate Bill 1. That tells you it was important. So what would this legislation do? It would require the Secretary of State to promulgate rules to conduct a PRV election, proportional ranked voting election, and promulgate rules to conduct the post-election audit of that election. And the date that we're proposing is January 1st, 2027 for both single and multi-county cities. Right now, the IRV deadline for the Secretary of State to deal with multi-county cities, they can't yet run an IRV election. So, but they will in 2 months. So we figure Neil convinced me that January 1st, 2027 shouldn't be a barrier. And Neil knows more about the inner workings of elections than almost anybody I know. So the other thing that the Secretary of State would have to do is certify the proportional ranked voting portion of the current ranked voting software. So we already have the software that can do it. Only the single winner portion is certified. So we don't need to get new software. We just need the Secretary of State to run their tests and certify the PRV portion. Does anybody have any questions about enabling legislation for PRV? Andrea and I and another person are going to go meet a legislator after Thanksgiving and hopefully get a sponsor for this. So, okay. I didn't see Tina Harris come on the call. She thought she might come on about 6 o'clock. I think I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit with Fort Collins, and Eric and Clayton can talk. First, we're calling it an IRV election here. Oh, Tina is here. Clark Harris is in the waiting room. Welcome, Clark Harris. Is she here?
Hello. Hello. Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. How's everyone?
We're very happy to have you here.
Oh, good. Good.
And Barb Winery also joined us, and Barb's been very involved in Greeley-Weld County League and was even on a lawsuit against the Weld County commissioners about their redistricting.
No.
Okay, so we were just about to start talking about Fort Collins. I had a screen that was just going to lay out a little bit of the structure of the election. Should I go ahead with that and then turn it over to all of you?
Oh, whatever works. We're in the process of preparing for the risk limiting audit tomorrow, so I may have to jump off sooner rather than later. I can't stay the whole time. So whatever works best.
Okay, why don't we do this real quick?
Okay.
A lot of people call the Fort Collins election an RCV election, but RCV includes several forms. So in this group, we typically call it instant runoff voting because that's a very specific method, RCV method, and it's the one that's allowed in Colorado statute. And Fort Collins held 3 IRV contests, and if I say anything wrong, please let me know. One contest for mayor, there were 7 candidates, and it went through 6 rounds of tabulation, which is the most it would go through, depending on how you count rounds of tabulation. The District 1 council member, there were 3 candidates. Somebody won on the first round, so it didn't trigger the instant runoff. And then District 3, there were 3 candidates and 2 rounds of tabulation. So we have 3 guests here. Tina Harris, thank you. You're the one who coordinated the election for Fort Collins, which is in Larimer County. Eric Freed is the father of ranked voting since 2011 in Fort Collins. He gave a talk to the Boulder County League in December 2011, and I heard that, and that's soon after that we started our voting methods team. And Clayton King and Stacy Frank are with the Alliance for Competitive Elections and conducted exit polling in Fort Collins. And I think I have the tabulation here, but if any of you have, I don't know if Clayton, if you had anything you wanted to share, or we should probably let Clerk Harris go first. If there's anything you want to say about how it went, or you haven't done the risk limiting audit yet, so you don't have to talk about that.
Well, I think it's important to actually say that we're still doing this election. We're still running it, right? So we have the risk limiting audit. It'll be a 2-day audit. We are separating the ranked voting, or IRV. We don't use IRV because it means something different to us in the election administration world. So in ranked voting, we'll have 2 separate risk limiting audits. They'll be separated each one day, the regular audit one day, and then the ranked voting audit on tomorrow. We're doing the ranked voting, then Wednesday. I don't even know what day it is, to be honest with you guys, so please bear with me if I don't get my dates right. And then the regular audit on Wednesday. And so, yeah, we're still working through it. We're still, it's our job to conduct this election by law and rule. And so counties must follow that specific step-by-step process that includes reconciliation, the risk limiting audit canvas, and then the formal certification. And so right now, what you're seeing is very preliminary. We don't anticipate there being any problems whatsoever when we go through this audit, but you just never know. There might be 1 or 2 things that come up. And so one thing that I do want to talk about here, which I think is very, very important, is that ranked voting is complex and it's a highly technical election model. So what I'm saying here is that it's not something that can just be implemented overnight. It took a lot of work for us to get to where we are today. And that planning, programming, and testing for the election took more than a year. Some people don't understand that, but us as a county, it took Boulder County a little over a year to plan for theirs in 2023. This is not a one size fits all, where it can just be a model can be developed and then dropped into counties and they can continue to, just fill that, or just to plug and play, right? So it does take a lot of work to do that, to conduct ranked voting. Our work began long before the ballots were mailed and included. So one of the big things that we had to do is develop educational materials for voters, and then also for the election judges. So that was really big, right? And then we learned learning how to program rank contests within the voting system. So that was another big thing that we had to learn. And then we did a lot of coordination with the city of Fort Collins and the Secretary of State's technical team in order to get where we are today, which we were fortunate. Unlike Boulder County, the Secretary of State has updated the Corla software, which is our risk limiting software, to allow us to do that audit. So we did not have to create our own separate audit for ranked voting, which is great. Boulder County had to create their own auditing process. I did not want to undergo that, so I was very happy that the Secretary of State's office was able to implement that for this. The other thing that we had to do, which was very unique to ranked voting, is designing and executing a new logic and accuracy test. And that was built specifically for ranked voting. So what that means is we have to test our system before we can, right after ballot layout, we test the system to make sure that how we mark those ballots, it's tabulating correctly.
So
And
you're saying that Boulder did not do a special LAT, logic and accuracy?
oh no, they did. But so what happens is their processes look way different than our processes. So we met with Boulder County probably at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, to really find out what their lessons learned. How did they do their LAT? Our LAT looked a lot different than their LAT, which is not bad. It's not wrong. No one did it wrong. It's just that they were working with the tools that they had at that time. We just kind of gleaned off of what they did to make sure that we are doing it exactly right. The Secretary of State's office sent an observer down, to our county to watch how we conducted the LAT, and they really liked that model. Whether that gets implemented, elsewhere, that's a different story.
How many candidates could you rank for the mayoral contest, which had 7 candidates?
System limitations only allowed us to do 10. So our voting equipment, you can't do more than 10 rankings for a race, a candidate race.
So people did get to rank all 7 if they wanted to.
Yes.
Okay.
So
great.
they got to rank all 7. If we had 11, if we had 10, they would get to rank all 10. But more than 10, then they could only rank 10, and then the other 2 or other 1, however many more, they would not get a ranking.
Yeah. You only need to rank 1 less than the number of you only need to rank 1 less than the number of candidates. Like if there are 4 candidates, there's no reason to rank the 4th one because it's never going to get to that candidate.
Yeah. We're looking forward to looking at all.
I think if you have 7 mayoral candidates and you only put 6 rankings because you only need 6, people will say, "Wait, why can't I have 7?" And you just don't want to deal with those questions.
We don't even throw that out into the universe, especially when it's a new voting method. We want to be as clear as we can with the communication that we put out. And so, and it's not our job to tell people when they should rank and when they shouldn't, right? We're just here to administer that election.
I wanted to say, tell everybody that the League of Women Voters in Larimer County really enjoyed working with you. And so I just didn't want to forget to say that. And Deborah Lycan has her hand up.
Okay.
I just had a question about how long it took to prepare. That seems really intimidating. Once you've done it once, will it be less the next year? And the second question is, why isn't it plug and play for different elections? After you work out the bugs, will people choose the best system for doing this, and it will tend to become more plug and play?
Well, I will put it this way. It was a very high learning curve. So not only did we have to, yes, we can meet with other counties, say Broomfield, which I think they're anticipating and doing something like this in 2027. We can absolutely sit down with Broomfield County and show them what we've done and how we prepared for that. But the biggest issue is really learning how the system works and how to do that ballot layout and all of that. It's just not simple. And unless I sent my crew there to do it, which wouldn't benefit them. And so that's really, and then the training of the election judges. We had to create a whole new voter intent guidelines to adjudicate ballots. So when they get marked incorrectly, or and there was marked ballots that were not correct. So, or they write in something, or there's some obscure mark on there. Those go through adjudication, and so we had to create a voter intent guide so that they knew how to navigate those markings, and that all has to go through the Secretary of State to get that stamp of approval to make sure that we're not missing anything, right? And some of the stuff we picked up from Boulder County, but the difference, ranked voting, depending on how many candidates you have for each of the races, is going to add could add some challenges that you just did not foresee. So honestly, when it comes to, hi Neil, I just saw you on there. So that could also add some, challenges to that. It'd be nice if it was plug and play, but as you know, rule gives us guidelines, but every county has their own processes when it comes to actually the throughput for the ballots into their system or through their counting facility.
I would expect the voter intent guide to be standardized across the state, though.
Well, that would be great. And I'm sure they are working on that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. But this is only the second ranked voting that a county has done in Colorado. And then we see different things. So one of the great things, or one of the things that we still have to do, and we can't do that until we've certified this election, is really dive deep into how voters mark their ballots, really look at trends. So at this point, we don't have a lot of data to share with you because it's just not readily available, right?
So Jen Clellan on this call has done some analysis of the Alaska elections and the voter marks. So I don't know if Jen's still working on that, but she might want to, I'm sure she's going to get a copy of the CVRs, as is Neil.
Oh, I'm sure. And, those are things that we will be, working on. And we will do a debrief after. And so part of that debrief will include, working with our internal team, doing a review with the internal team. We will we'll identify lessons learned. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Because we want to share that knowledge with other counties. And then we'll be reviewing ranked ballot pattern, how they ballot patterns and transfer behavior. So we'll be looking at different things to see if we can identify any anonymous, I can't even say that word. I know I have it in my head, but I'm a little tired at this point. And then the follow-up, and we'll be having a debrief and follow-up meetings with the city of Fort Collins. And, I believe that these conversations are essential. But we just have to wait until after we close up that election, certify the election. What question did you have, Neil?
Well, first, I just want to thank you. I mean, clerks are heroes in my mind, and people that step forward to do challenging things like a year of work on IRV are fabulous. So thank you for that. And in particular, thank you for doing something that we didn't convince Boulder to do, which is to show each elimination round so that it's possible for everybody to know where did their vote go and where did everybody else's vote go after their candidate was eliminated. And that's just critical.
Neil, the Boulder County was following the rules, and we got the rules changed after, so that now.
I think it was still an option at the time, but so very, very glad that you did that. One thing that I wanted to say in terms of the cast vote record, we were very happy that Boulder provided a full cast vote record. They didn't redact that. They did that without providing any of the imprinted IDs, and we need that in order to be able to reproduce the results. So I'm hoping that at the appropriate time, you can make all the details in the cast vote record just for that contest, all the rankings on every ballot for that contest, to allow us to make sure that unlike Alameda, California, which actually got the wrong answer and had to go through court to get that fixed, that we can do that. So my question is really, you're doing audits for 2 days, and I know Boulder did that last time. Is that by choice? Does the software allow you to do it all in one fell swoop on a single day? How does that work?
Well, that's a great question. And so one of the reasons it's going to be a 2-day process is because we're going to be auditing almost 500 ballots. So this is an extensive audit. And, one of the reasons, and that really has to do with how many candidates. The mayoral race is one of those races that we will be auditing. And because there were so many candidates, we felt that was a good size. I think it's 230 ballots for risk limiting or for the ranked voting, and then maybe 20 for the targeted race that the Secretary of State determined. So that's one of the reasons there's no way we could get through 500, almost 500 ballots in one day. So that's why it's going to extend over to 2 days.
Are you doing that by style? In other words, in Boulder, they were able to only select ballots from the cast vote record that had the city race on them. Do you have to do a selection across the whole county, or can you do it only for the Fort Collins?
So that's a great question. The county race is going to be, they've created that seed for us, right? And I believe, and so please, Neil, I'm not sure of this, but I believe that there was a separate seed created for the ranked voting because we wanted it to be 2 separate audits. We wanted it to see it separately. And that was our preference. Because we wanted to make sure that people have the confidence in this election, right? We want to be able to say, yes, we did the risk limiting audit on the targeted race for the county as a whole, which will also include some of those races, those Fort Collins races in it. And then we're doing an actual separate audit for the ranked voting to ensure that confidence.
Well, congratulations. That's a lot of ballots. Thank you.
I put in the chat the targeted races for both Larimer County and the state.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that IRV means something different in the county clerk world, and that surprised me. So or maybe instant runoff means something different. What can you explain?
Hold on, I got to get my notes up.
Okay.
You're asking me a tough question at the end of the night. I'm kidding. Let's
know if Eric or Clayton, either of you want to say anything right now. I will show the tabulation breakdown if neither of you are planning to do it. Betsy asks a question. Neil, you're on it.
Can we get a concise definition of risk limiting audit? A risk limiting audit is an audit which is designed not to actually check the exact tabulation, but to check whether the outcome matches what the paper ballots would show. And so it uses statistical techniques to figure out what the margin of victory is and how much auditing you have to do to get within the risk limit, in this case, 3%, to get, no more than a 3% chance of having the paper ballots not match the outcome.
Is it 3% everywhere, every city, every?
No, that actually
Larimer?
is a barrier in Colorado because it keeps us from selecting some of the contests that we really would like to audit.
So the 3% you mentioned is for Larimer County or Fort Collins, the city of Fort Collins, or the state, or?
It's for the state. I can't say if there's anything different for this contest.
Yeah, it's for the state. Yeah.
Celeste, to answer your question before, I did have a few slides and I was prepared to talk a little bit about the Fort Collins election. So,
Great.
whenever that's appropriate.
Great. I'm going to let Claire Karras continue on because her time is limited, but if she wants to yield to you, that's okay too. Did you get the answer to the instant runoff question?
I did. We sent this over to Kathleen Schmidt. Is that, yep, Schmidt, when we were doing we were working with her to do presentations to help her with presentations at the league. Instant runoff voting is less accessible and less recognizable to most voters.
Yeah.
Especially since Fort Collins did not previously have a system of runoff elections. That's why we did not use it, because we did not want to. Now in Denver, that would be a different story, right? You could use instant runoff and people would understand what instant runoff is if they went to the ranked voting method, right? And so here, because we've never used it, we decided that we were going to stick with ranked voting because that was what was in the charter for the city of Fort Collins. We just wanted to be consistent with our language.
Yeah, the state statute title is basically the ranked voting section of the statute. And in 1-7-1003, they specifically mention instant runoff voting for the single winner. But I understand wanting to use ranked voting, and we're starting to use proportional ranked voting instead of the more inaccessible term single transferable vote. So
right.
Yeah, so okay.
And so, part of that communication or part of that education piece for the city of Fort Collins is we really wanted to be very consistent in our messaging. Whether it was the city of Fort Collins out there talking about it in our community, or us, and even the league when Kathleen put together a great a PowerPoint presentation. And so, she would present it, and then we would be there to answer questions if the community had questions. So it was very nice. And so we just tried to be very consistent with our messaging there.
Great.
And so that's all I really have. And I know that's not a great update for you guys right now. And I'm probably you guys were looking for a little more. We're just not at that point. We're excited that we're coming to the end. We're going to finish up this election, and we're getting to the point where we can start analyzing the data and start really diving deep and doing that debrief. It's just that we're not at that point yet. So
this has been great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I appreciate you letting me just hop on and kind of hijack your meeting. Eric, it's good to see you on camera.
Thanks for everything you did, Claire Karras. We really appreciate that. You guys did a great job at the first election.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. And if you guys have questions along the way, don't hesitate to reach out, okay?
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Bye, Neil. Bye, everyone else.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so Eric, can you share your screen?
Yep, I believe I can. Let me try.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay.
And maybe Clayton or Stacy, if you have something to say, maybe you can jump in too, as maybe Eric won't mind if you jump in.
So are people seeing that first slide about Fort Collins ranked vote? Okay. And I'll shorten this because Claire Karras went over some of this. Let me just say, to explain what this father of ranked voting thing is. I started working on this early 2000s, I think. I don't remember exactly. In my spare time from my day job, I helped get John Kafalis elected to the state assembly. He sponsored one of the first ranked voting bills to encourage it on a local level, as well as set up the voter choice task force to study certain things. I worked with John for many years. 2011, 29 through 11, we actually had a group called Ranked Voting for Fort Collins Ranked Voting, of which I was co-chair. We collected signatures, got it on the ballot. but were unsuccessful. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later, the difference between the 2011 campaign that failed and the 2022 campaign that succeeded. Some 10 years later, people brought it back up. They were working with Represent Us and League of Women Voters and asked me to work with them. So I was on the board, but I was not running that campaign. The 2022 campaign was much more successful. It did pass. Said the first ranked voting election for Fort Collins mayor and city council would be November 2025. And so that gave the city and the county time to work on this. The city decided to go with a coordinated election with the county, and you heard a lot from the county clerk about what they did to get ready for the election. And so this last election, for the first time, I got to fill out my own ballot in Fort Collins for mayor and city council, ranking all the candidates, and that was just a lot of fun to finally see something come to fruition. So the ballot measure in 20 this is from the city's own website explaining ranked choice voting. Why are we doing ranked choice voting? Basically because the voters passed it in 2022 for any race with more than 2 candidates. And then the city and the county had to work through a lot of things. I mean, the county ran the elections, but the city did a whole lot too in terms of voter outreach, mailing things out, putting it on their website. They produced door hangers, which the League of Women Voters coordinated with them to go around and try to put on every door in Fort Collins. So I did a lot of that. I guess I should also say that my day job this whole time was working for Larimer County government, where I was a building inspector for many years and a code compliance officer. And for the last 12 years, I was the chief building official for Larimer County. But that was a separate hat. Larimer County's policy is that you can do political work on your own time, representing yourself without using county resources, which is all good. And that's what I did basically. And so this lists some of the things they did. They had a lot of information on their website. The door hanger had a QR code. It directed people to their website. It explained how to fill out a ranked choice voting ballot. This also talks about some of the things they were required to do under state law. I won't go over that in any detail because Tina Harris has already talked about a lot of that. So how did the first RCV election go? This is from the county website. Turnout was 49%, which is actually very good for city of Fort Collins municipal elections. It's usually far lower than that. On their website, they listed all the mayoral candidates. District 135, it's already been mentioned. We're going to focus on the mayoral election because it had 7 candidates. One of the other races, there was an outright winner in the first round, and the other race only took 2 rounds of voting to come up with a winner. So these are the 7 candidates for mayor. Tricia Canonico, who was a city council member. I can't, in just a short time, really explain their whole platform, but I tried to get excerpts for each one so you could see who they are. In Fort Collins, people don't run as a member of a political party. These are municipal elections, nonpartisan. But the voters know, typically the more liberal, conservative, moderate candidates, who's backed by the environmentalists, who's backed by the home builders, Chamber of Commerce, etc. So Tricia Canonico was one of the major candidates, being a city council member. This is an alphabetical order. Adam Eggleston, I would say, was more of a moderate candidate, small business, works with the sheriff's office victim witness program, has been a realtor. Third one was Emily Francis, who was the mayor pro tem, or the vice mayor basically, and city council member for one of the other districts. Then we had Adam Hirschhorn, who I believe was in the Green Party. He might not have been considered as much of a mainstream candidate. If you look at his statement, I went to a couple of candidate events. At every candidate event, he would mention what was going on in Gaza, climate change, and full-blown fascism. So, which is great, it's fine. But when the question is, well, should we prioritize streets or parks? It doesn't necessarily answer that question. So, then there was Shirley Peel, who had been on the city council before, and her election in 2021 was one of the things that galvanized support, in my opinion, for ranked voting in Fort Collins. She was more of the business community. Then we had Jeffrey Shumway, former Air Force police detective, mostly running different than the other candidates who were talking more about environmental protection, climate, affordable housing. His priorities were balancing the budget without raising taxes, and letting entrepreneurs innovate. it gives you kind of the flavor of where he was coming from. And then finally we had Scott Van Tottenhove, who went by Scotty, and kind of a unique perspective. He was a Fort Collins high school teacher, didn't really have a platform, basically said he will hand the power back to the people and do what they want him to do. So here's how the 6 rounds of voting went. There's an animation here, which is very nice. And if I knew how to capture an animation, I would have done that, but I have a static thing here. So first round of voting, Adam Hirshhorn was the lowest candidate. And Scotty Adam, you could see all the way up. Emily Francis was first in the first round and was first in every round, basically. And then you could see where those votes were distributed to. When Adam Hirshhorn went out, most of his votes went to Emily Francis, and then Tricia Canonico, and then some went to Scotty Van Tottenhove. Scotty was the second one eliminated. Again, most of his votes went to Emily Francis, some to Tricia Canonico. And as we go through the rounds, then we had Adam Eggleston eliminated.
Eric?
Yeah.
I noticed all the men are getting eliminated. Did the candidate's gender come up at all in this, or?
It didn't come up, but Fort Collins in recent elections has been shown a clear preference for voting for female candidates.
Okay.
Our current city council and mayor has 1 male and 6 women, which is kind of interesting. On the county commission, county board of commissioners, there's 2 women and 1 male. So the roles have been reversed. Traditionally men dominated, but women candidates seem to do better with voters in Fort Collins.
And will you share these slides with me so I can post them? Can I post them on the league?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I'll
great.
send them to you for sure.
Great, thank you.
And then Jeffrey Shumway was the next to go out. You can see that most of his votes went to Shirley Peel because they were kind of similar, more the Chamber of Commerce, realtors, more conservative, you would say, candidates. And so it made sense that most of Jeffrey's votes went to Shirley Peel. And then finally, Shirley Peel went out, left the two leading candidates, the 2 city council member. And then finally in the 6th time, did I not include that? Oh no, this is the winning one here. Okay. So Emily Francis in the 6th round got 56% of the vote and was elected.
So we just to make sure everybody knows that 56% is the 56% of the remaining active vote, because not everybody ranked all the candidates.
Right. This is a little hard to see. I'm sorry about that if you blow it up, but this is the tally when you download the voter file or download the voter results. In the end, there were 46,000 votes for Emily or Tricia and 6,474 exhausted ballots, which the way just off the top of my head is like between 10 and 15% were exhausted, which means that 95% of the voters ranked all the candidates, and all their ballots continued all the way through to the 6th round, which I think is really good. Interestingly, there were 3,700 blank ballots, so people didn't vote for mayor, I guess, mayor or city council. Maybe it was too confusing for them. I don't know. But this also shows you, who went out where their votes went to, basically.
I think a ballot could remain not exhausted even if they only ranked those final 2 candidates.
Right.
So it
Right.
doesn't require them to rank all 7.
Right.
That's true. So that just means that there were 6,400 votes for one of the candidates who is not in the final round, one of the other 5 candidates.
Exactly.
And I recognize that there are experts on here who probably know more about ranked choice voting than I do. So I'm on the board of ranked choice voting for Colorado, but I don't claim to be an expert on all the
You're
details.
doing great.
So some observations. There were 7 candidates from across the political spectrum, left, center, right. I didn't hear anybody accusing someone of being a spoiler or splitting the vote, which is one of the main benefits of alternative voting methods. Anyone can run, because let's say you supported Adam Hirshhorn, who in a plurality vote probably would have been considered not a serious candidate. And if you vote for him, you take votes away from someone else. But you could vote for Adam, and then when he was eliminated in round 1, his votes transferred to someone else. I didn't see any negative campaigning, or very little negative campaigning. Not that Fort Collins usually is, a heavy mudslinging type elections, but It was very cordial, and some of the candidates talked about how they liked the way the voting went. The lead candidate in round one was the eventual winner. No candidates changed positions.
So can I just bump in here a second? When Boulder held its mayoral candidate, the lead candidate in round one eventually lost. And a lot of people who supported that candidate were very unhappy. But it worked the way it's supposed to work, right? Like just because you don't like the outcome doesn't mean it didn't work. But it's nice the first time you do it for people to feel like, oh, that candidate would have won anyway. Maybe it's like it'll help a little more there.
Right. That's been a problem where the leading candidate was not the consensus candidate in the final round, and people thought that meant they didn't really choose the right candidate. Deborah has her hand up, if I'm allowed to call on people.
You're muted.
You're muted, Deborah.
Sorry. I was just going to comment that when people are used to first past the post, then when you first look at the first round, you feel like the top candidate ought to win the election. And so I think it's getting used to the multiple rounds and other people's second votes counting that is less intuitive and needs some education about how it might turn out.
I just want to say it's better to say have their second choice counted rather than their second vote. Nobody gets 2 votes. And unless you're in Utah with that bad kind of RCV, nobody gets 2 votes.
I'm sorry, I apologize. That's what I meant.
No. I mean, we're all human, and we all, these are all new things, but I do try to call it out so that we all are on the same page on this.
So turnout was kind of low until the very end, and those of us who support ranked choice voting and who support election engagement and all were worried. I think what happened, this is from the county's website again, showing you when the ballots were turned in, so you could see a whole bunch were turned in last weekend in a couple days. I think that's for several reasons. One, it was the first ranked voting election, which does require more of the voters if you want to rank all or most of the candidates. You have to research them all and think about it. But it was also complicated. It was a long ballot locally. There were county, state, city tax measures and city charter amendments and all kinds of stuff. And I think people just took their time to do it. But eventually, the turnout was 49%, which is actually pretty good for city elections. This is just some more coordinated election data showing you who voted. We have more unaffiliateds than Democrats or Republicans, which I think is true statewide. And my demographic, now that I'm in the 65 to 74 category, we have voted everybody else. What's happening next? You heard that they're going to do the risk limiting audits and release the final results. The unofficial results came along right along with the other elections on election night. So there wasn't like waiting for a long time. As the ballots came in, they were just rerunning the through the software, and we knew the results that same night. So that was very good. Exit polling has been done. I'm sure we'll hear more about that from the folks from Alliance for Competitive Elections. Fair Vote was trying to do election polling as well, where they were in touch with us. I'm not sure if they got it together or when. And I'm assuming because the election went pretty well, they'll continue to happen. I mean, I don't expect there to be someone raising a challenge saying, hey, let's get rid of ranked choice voting in Fort Collins. And if it worked well in Fort Collins, and it did, that should give more impetus to Longmont, other cities, counties, maybe pushing for allowing county commissioners or county elected officials, school boards. And of course, we'd like it eventually to go statewide. There was that one statewide vote on ranked choice voting, which failed, but that was tied to Final Four and Ken Thiry. And I think if there was a clean vote, we could probably win that. We actually advised him, please don't link these two together. But Ken Thiry predominantly listens to Ken Thiry, in my opinion. And then if I can just do really quickly, and I'll leave time for other people, what changed between 2011 and 2022? In 2011, we gathered signatures to put the measure on the ballot. It only got 39% of the vote. And in 2022, there was a broader coalition. That was the main thing. It was just a broader campaign, had more people involved, worked through the city process. The city put it on the ballot, and it passed pretty handily. In 2011, I collected a lot of signatures, and we would stop people by saying, "Excuse me, do you know what ranked choice voting is?" And nobody knew what it was. So we had to explain what ranked choice voting is and how it's the best way to produce a majority winner, and why you should produce a majority winner, because Fort Collins didn't require majority winners. You could win with 25% of the vote. So it was a big uphill climb. And then by the time we finished getting the signatures on the ballot, we only had a few months before the city election in April, and we just didn't mount a good enough campaign. And the opponents used the old canard of, well, ranked choice voting is extremely complicated. No one understands how it works. Now, you heard it is more complicated on the backside for county clerks. It's not complicated for voters. So in the same way, you don't have to be a computer programmer to use your computer or be a car mechanic to drive a car. You don't have to know all the nitty-gritty details to use the ranked choice voting election. You just rank your candidates. So I think we had helped lay the groundwork in 2011. So by 2022, people had heard of it. It had come up. But more importantly, it had advanced around the country. People knew what it was. It was generally pretty popular. And the other thing that happened is, this is just a local this was a local fact that influenced it. In 2021, there was a race for a city council seat in the southwest part of the city. There were 5 candidates. One was Shirley Peel. She was the most conservative candidate, more the business candidate. And there were 4 progressives. And Shirley got about 30% of the vote, and the 4 progressives got 70% of the vote, which they split 4 ways. So Shirley was elected. So most people could look at that and go, now, wait a minute. That's not a representative outcome. 70% of the voters in that district, which is pretty liberal, voted for a liberal, but they got this conservative. That's not right. And that really galvanized people, and some of the losing candidates got involved. And so I think that was probably one of the main things that pushed it over the edge to win that election in 2022.
Also, Jenny Arndt, who was not yet, she became your mayor in 2021. She, in that election, I guess, she was sponsoring a bill to enable instant runoff voting in Colorado. She and Chris Kennedy. So she was also an advocate for it, and later became your mayor.
This is true. So
Deborah has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just okay. Let me stop sharing so that hopefully, there we go. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the objections is in ranked choice voting is having to rank all 7 candidates. And so I'm still interested in whether we do or don't know how many of the people who voted ranked all 7. Because I heard there was a discussion between you and Neil, and I didn't quite get it. Do you know how many people or what fraction ranked all 7?
I don't know that for sure, but I do know that in the final round of voting, there were 46,000 votes cast for one of those 2 candidates. And in the first round of voting, there was 53,000. So only about 6,000 people dropped off. Now, it's true that those were the most popular candidates. But I don't know offhand how many, and I don't think we'll know until the county clerk finishes their work and gives us the final results. But it looks like a large proportion of people ranked all or most of the candidates just from quick result. And maybe Clayton knows more. I don't know.
Typically, you don't need to rank all the candidates, but you should rank at least one of the front runners in your list if you want your ballot to count in the end, in the final round. And when Rob Ritchie wrote an editorial for the New York City mayoral contest 4 years ago, he said, you get to rank 5 people, make sure, or you get to rank 6. I don't, he said, these are the 5 people who are the top, the front runners. So, rank whoever you want first, but then make sure you rank at least some of these if you want your vote to count more toward the end of the tabulation. But in Cambridge, when I was there in 2017, they had 26 council candidates. You could rank all 26. You can be sure most people did not rank 26 candidates. And they haven't since cut it down. Now the maximum is 15 that you can rank. Even if they have 26 candidates, you can only rank 15. So, but that's plenty. I think people don't feel disenfranchised. Clayton, did you want to add anything, or Stacy?
We-
Oh, wait. There was a question from Betsy in the chat.
Yeah, Eric, looking at that large number of ballots that dropped at the end, and you speculated about the time it took to research the candidates, was there a strategic extra effort to provide candidate information on all the candidates, or did you just leave that to them?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that the League of Women Voters did anything more than the usual, other than pointing people to the city elections, and then the information that was on there, and then the newspaper we had did that, and the usual folks did that. But there is no ranked choice voting for Fort Collins Group anymore. It was formed as an issue committee for the 22 election and then dissolved after that point. So there's no core group left in Fort Collins that's pushing this thing. There's still a few of us interested in it. So I guess there was not a strategic effort to provide more information on candidates.
Vote411.org. That's a league website for those of you who are not league members that provides ballot and candidate information. Okay, Clayton,
Yes.
I
we
had
have
something to say, but I forget what it was. Anyway, Clayton, go ahead.
Yes. So we've got some slides we'd like to share as well here that Stacy's going to pull up here. We did an exit poll that we're going to talk about a little bit that goes through some general voter behavior questions and some ranked choice voting questions as well.
I do remember the thing I was going to ask, which was one of the candidates in one of the, I think it was District 3, is Steve Urash, who started the Center Party. And I don't know if that came up. So keep that in mind as you're talking. If you have anything to say, I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. I can touch on that a little bit when we get into some of these numbers here. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. So who are we? We're the Alliance for Competitive Elections. We're a new nonprofit started here in Colorado, focused on bringing more competitive elections to voters and more options to voters as well. And that means different voting choices that are more representative and opportunities for more parties to participate within the political system as well. I'm Clayton King. I'm a former program officer with the International Republican Institute, no longer with them, but we implemented political party development in Eastern Europe. We have Kyle as well, who's not here with us today, and then I'll hand it to Stacy to introduce herself here.
Yeah, my name is Stacy Frank. I worked with Clayton at IRI, but my background is in public opinion research. I've worked in public opinion research for about 12 years. So that's one of my focus areas, and my focus area to the US and to the effort to make sure our elections are more representative of people's wishes.
All right. So what do we do? Like I mentioned before, the Alliance for Competitive Elections builds capacity and opportunities for third parties to be competitive in elections and bring them into this conversation as well. Just to note, there are conversations about new election models and everything happening, and we found that these conversations don't necessarily always happen with the parties who are going to be operating within these systems once they're changed. And so part of our endeavor is to teach new parties about things like ranked choice voting and bring them into the conversation to advocate for the types of election changes that allow them to participate in future election systems more effectively.
And can we get a copy of your slides also?
Of course.
Thanks.
All right.
And so we're here today to talk a little bit more about our exit poll. This was our inaugural bit of research for the organization. So it was a small scale effort, but it was a really interesting election, and we thought it was important to try to collect some data from the people about their experiences of ranked choice voting in particular, and also just get some more information about their feelings about the just election and political system at the moment. So we executed this by posting interviewers at drop boxes in Fort Collins. We had data collection in the 4 days prior to the election, so it was November 1st through the election was on the 4th, and we actually had a couple of respondents submit their responses on the 5th, so we accepted those as well because they were invited to participate before the election. We had 7 interviewers who were posted at 3 different Dropbox locations. Clayton was one of them. I think Eric was one of them too. Respondents had the ability to conduct the survey online or on paper. So they could do it on paper with the interviewer who's at the Dropbox. They could open the QR code on their phone to fill it out then, or they could take the QR code and do it later. So with people who did it actually after election day. And we had 85 total completed interviews. So when you're looking at any research, it's important to understand who is included in the sample and who represents. When you're talking about off-year elections, you're already talking voters in off-year elections, you're already talking about a group that is not necessarily representative of the general population of an area. And then in our poll, there were some demographic hits and misses in terms of the representatives of who we were trying to reach. And so in our sample, it was heavily skewed towards women more so than in demographic spread of the people who actually voted in the election. On these graphs, the left-hand bars that are kind of dark blue are the demographic breakdowns from the Larimer County election website for this election. And then the yellow bars, the orange bars are the distribution in our polls. So you can see that we had an overrepresentation of women. We had a slight overrepresentation of people who affiliated with the Democratic Party. The number of people who said that they were affiliated or didn't identify with the party is actually pretty close to the distribution in the actual sample of, or the actual population of people who voted. The age distribution of our sample actually matched pretty well with the age distribution of the voters in general, and voters in general in Larimer County for this election were disproportionately older voters. And so in comparison to Larimer County in general, the voting population was older, and also the population of the sample in our survey was conservative. And then our sample was mostly white, 93%, which overrepresented the white people, 78%. And Larimer County as a whole, I don't have the percentages for people who voted in this election because the county did not publish that information.
So just a time check, I don't know how many slides you have, but this officially ends at 7. I'm happy to have it go longer, but some people may need to drop off.
Yeah, and we can move through things pretty quickly. Just as a public opinion researcher, it's really important to lay out who we did and didn't talk to and our methods. So I appreciate the time you guys invest. Thanks.
So one of the questions we asked was what policy was the most important to you on how you voted today? And we were a little surprised to see the impact of federal policies impacting the reason why people were voting in local elections. That did resonate with some conversations we had with some candidates as well. But concerns about the federal government was 32% of responses, followed by 18% of economy as the top 2 issues focused by voters for this election. Next slide. In general, how well do you think the political system is working in Colorado? A lot of people do think the political system is working either very well or somewhat well. That number drops a little bit when you ask how well they think the current political parties in Colorado represent the interests of its residents. 12% say very well, 64% say somewhat well, and then you got a larger block there for not too well and not well at all, about 25% overall compared to if the political system's working. So clearly people think the political system's working, and political parties as well, more somewhat well, I would say. All right, I don't know why the color shifted, but we can go to the next slide here.
Yeah, so sorry, it was like confusion between. In this point, I just want to highlight that people aren't completely appalled by the system right now, but there is a lot of space, as indicated by these numbers, for people to be more satisfied with their system. That's just what I'm.
Yes. Do you feel well represented by any current political party? Yes, Democratic, 44%, but no, I do not feel well represented by any party was 39%, which is on par with statewide data as well, from what I'm remembering. So a large percent of Fort Collins voters in this sample did not feel represented by any party. Did you consider party affiliation when selecting which candidate to vote for during this local election? And I know this was a nonpartisan election on paper, but just seeing, do people, whether it's nonpartisan election or not, do they consider party? This is an interesting question. And 75% of people actually said yes, that they consider party affiliation when selecting candidates at a local level, meaning partisanship was directly affecting the local election result regardless. And then, have you ever voted for a candidate who was not associated with the Democratic or Republican Party? 67% said yes in this sample, which is pretty high. How likely or unlikely would you be to vote in a future election for a candidate who's not associated with the Democratic or Republican parties? Combined, very likely or somewhat likely was over 75, 80%, if my math is right, which is
so if
pretty high.
Somebody's running in a nonpartisan election, would that be counted as somebody who's not associated with the Republican or Democratic parties?
Could you repeat
That's
that?
a good.
If somebody's running in a nonpartisan election and they don't tout their affiliation, maybe they're unaffiliated, or maybe they're not, who knows? Would that be considered voting in an election for a candidate who's not associated? I mean,
so the intent of this question was to get at, will you vote for a third party candidate? We chose to phrase it this way because people don't always realize or understand what a third party candidate is. So we were trying to ask the question in a way that people will be more likely to understand what you're saying. But honestly, you're pointing out an ambiguity in the text of the question that people could have interpreted it the way that you're suggesting. So that's honestly a good point to consider for asking this question in the future.
So I'm going to put in the chat down ballot podcast that I just listened to, recommended by Frank Venturo, Pat Venturo's husband, on this call. And it talks about polling question, and they chose not to use the word Democratic or Democrat, and they got different results. And so you might want to listen. I'll put it in the chat for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The way you phrase questions impacts results. And so the goal and intention was to not make the question accessible, but there's always a better way to phrase things, honestly.
Okay. Let's go to the next question here. Why are you unlikely to vote for a candidate who's not associated with the Democratic or Republican Party? I want to vote for someone who will win. This is the spoiler question that pops up most of the time when this question's asked. And similarly, we're seeing it pop up in Fort Collins, even in a place where you've got ranked choice voting. Followed by, I vote to prevent the opposing party from gaining power, and I don't know what policies other parties support. This is a word blob that we did just to see, open answer, the kind of words that people associated with what would make them consider voting for a candidate who's not associated with their parties. And experience really popped up here, which was really important for thinking about how to have lower stakes elections, lower stakes offices that smaller parties can get their foot in the door with, that they can build that experience with. And then, policies and values as well are clearly demonstrating importance for local voters here in Fort Collins. All right. And then how important is it to you that Colorado elections allow candidates who are not associated with the major parties to be listed on the ballot? This was overwhelming. 71% said very important, 22% said somewhat important. So overall, we're talking about a super majority of people saying they want to have more options on the ballot. which is great to see.
And then we asked a series of questions about ranked choice voting. First, we just asked, how familiar are you with ranked choice voting? Which in this environment, we were asking people who were dropping off their ballots, they just used ranked choice voting on their ballots. So you would expect this to be high, but also at the same time, levels of awareness change. In this question, we didn't actually say, hey, you just voted using ranked choice voting. So people did have actually a pretty high level of awareness and familiarity with RCV in general. Which was good to see and was probably at least partially attributable to the county's efforts at educating voters before this election. In the next question, we did say Fort Collins just implemented this, and then we asked, do you support or oppose continued use of RCV in your local community? And overwhelmingly, again, people out of it. Definitely a solid majority said yes, they strongly or some support the use of ranked choice voting in future elections, which is great to see. And then a pattern that we saw in several of these questions is that people in the younger-ish age bracket, 49 and under, were more supportive of RCV in general. And so you can see 69% of people in that 18 to 49 bracket said they strongly supported the continued use of RCV versus 43% in the age 55 plus bracket. Next, we asked, did you use the RCV? Did the use of RCV in the 2025 election make it easier or more difficult for you to decide how to fill out your ballot? And generally speaking, the story is a lot of people actually said it made it easier. A good chunk said neither easier or more difficult. And then there are people who said it was a little harder or much harder. But overall, given the fact that this is the very first time that Fort Collins did this, I find these numbers actually to be pretty encouraging. Like, this is not a disaster scenario of like I was saying, they'll be voting because they didn't understand it or anything like that. A majority of people actually said it made it easier or no more difficult than previously to use this. And then we asked, do you support or oppose implementing RCV in future Colorado statewide elections? A majority said yes, they support it. Almost 50% say they strongly support it. And then again, in that 18 to 49 bracket, there's even stronger support. And then we asked, would using RCV make you more or less likely to vote for a candidate who's not associated with one of the two major parties? And people, a majority said they're much or somewhat more likely to vote for a minor party candidate in that situation. Again, this sentiment is stronger among young people. One thing I want to point out about this is that we showed on a previous slide, among the people we talked to, 67% said they had already voted for a candidate not associated with the Republican or Democratic Party, which Celeste, you raised a potential issue with the interpretation of that question, but I do want to flag that there is the possibility that there was more openness to minor party voting for minor parties in this group in general, definitely probably more than the general population would be. Which is probably fueling these numbers. So you need to kind of take that into consideration when interpreting the data. But on the whole, there does seem to be a recognition that RCV would make people more comfortable voting for alternate candidates. And I think the other thing to point out is 31% said they're not sure if RCV would make them more or less likely to vote for a third party candidate. And I would say that that is a area of potential further education for the electorate on the future benefits of RCV. And that is all that we have. Anyone has any questions, we'd love to talk further about the information.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And I hope you check out that podcast on down ballot questions. I used to teach math to elementary school kids, and I did a unit on statistics, and we would somebody's coming to collect money from me right now. Anyway, I would ask questions like, would you vote for Barack Obama in one poll, or would you vote for Barack Hussein Obama in another poll because his middle name is Hussein, and like little things like that. And so how you ask the question is really important. There are some comments in the chat, and I was going to talk, Wendy, about the approval voting election. Wendy, would you like to talk about it? And I need to go and talk to I can put some slides up.
Sure, I'll talk about it real briefly.
Okay, great.
Mostly I put a link there.
Yeah.
But we had a senator in Utah switched from his party to the Forward Party while he was in office. He then stepped down before the end of his term. And as would normally happen, the party would decide who was going to fill the seat. They have chosen to take a different approach. The Forward Party is living their values, and they are creating an open, competitive process for anyone in the district to participate in. And so you can read about it there at the link that I sent, but it's a way for everyone in the district to help choose their replacement rather than having the party bosses pick their replacement, even though we had the opportunity to do so. So that's it in short. They're also using some interesting voting software there that some of you will think are very useful. So they're going to try to do the best they can to show the value of election reform in selecting representatives. I wasn't really planning on going into any detail. So is Celeste coming back? Because I thought it was almost over. That's why I put this forward.
Yeah, I think she is. She had to.
Yeah, she was. She had somebody that was telling something to her.
Does anyone have questions, or is there anyone else, anybody wanted to share? Stacy, maybe, did you have any more you wanted to share on this, or were you aware of this?
No.
You definitely want to look into it. It's super cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Why is Celeste, does Celeste say there's a fatal flaw in the Utah system?
That's a different Utah. That's a preferential block voting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Different subject.
So, sorry, I had to take off there. The meeting is officially over, I guess, but sorry. So I did make some slides for this Utah election, and I
didn't go into a lot of detail, Celeste.
Yeah, but I tried to have that. So I am so excited about this vacancy election. This is just making me so happy because I'm unhappy with what happened in El Paso County District 5, where they limited the candidates and they limited the voters, but that's not what's happening in Utah. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, I think we should revisit this, Celeste, when we have more time.
Okay, and I do encourage people to go watch that 12-minute video. It's very uplifting. So yeah. Okay, maybe I'll stop sharing. You are seeing my slides, aren't you?
No.
Oh, darn it. I thought I slept the slides up. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll put up that one slide that I thought I had. Here we go. Now I'm sharing, I
There you go.
That's the www.11chooses.com/apply has a 12-minute video. And I think this is in the chat that Wendy put in, but I had some other, like, here's an approval voting ballot. And here is the plan. Anybody can run, every voter can vote, and we're using approval voting. That is democratic with a small d. Absolutely. I just think it's fabulous.
Let's put our money where our mouth is and
yes,
live in the values.
So, yes, kudos to the Forward Party. That's just so fabulous. So, and then Nate Allen from the Approval Voting Party in Utah asked me to make sure people know about 11chooses.com and utahapproves.org, which will have more information. It's too late now to run if you're in that Senate district. The application deadline is closed, but according to the website. But yeah, it's so exciting. Is there anything else people want to say before we close out? I would like to. The shared window is closed. Did I? Oh, I guess I did that. Did you see me moving from screen to screen or no?
A little bit.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
It's all good information, Celeste.
Sorry?
This was a worthwhile meeting. There was plenty of good information. It's
Great.
just
Yeah, I thought that was excellent.
Good. And I will I'll talk about Greenbelt, Maryland next time since we didn't get to it. Can you see my screen right now with the Fort Collins IRV election?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to say one more follow-up thing on the Fort Collins election. So if you look in this first column in round one, a majority of continuing ballots is 26,407. It's in green background. And that number changes as the number of active votes, the non-exhausted votes, goes down.
not bad.
But the number of votes cast in the election doesn't change. It's always 26,407. And the number of ballots that's majority. A majority of the ballots cast doesn't change either, because once you've cast your ballot, you've cast your ballot. It might be exhausted, but it's still a ballot. And so one of the things we talk about in this group is what majority means. And so I've gone to the round 6 of the mayoral election, and the number that is reported when they say percentage of votes, they actually mean percentage of active votes. So Emily Francis won with 56% of the active votes. She actually only got 49.3% of the total votes as of the unofficial results of November 6th, 2:34 p.m. But so, you know, I worry a lot about the word majority. I was very worried about it in Prop 131, and they ended up not using that word, which I think was the right choice. So I don't want to keep us any longer, but I did want to say, be careful with the word majority. So Emily Francis did not get a majority of the total votes. She did not get a majority of the total ballots, but she did get a majority of the active votes. So let's see, there's something in the chat. Okay. I think we'll stop here unless somebody else has another question. I appreciate everybody coming and your interest.
Thank you,
And the
Celeste.
league appreciates it too. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
for having me.
Do I need to end, Celeste, or do you?
If you can stop the I can stop the recording, I guess. I see how to do it, I think.